But unfortunately he had brain damage. And arising from that, he turned from a nice, genial chap, a very ordinary chap, but he turned into a narky old git. He turned into an obsessive, compulsive person. And he also developed an interest in photography. And in 1877, he, through the use of a particular type of machinery called a zoopraxiscope, if I get that right, he managed to prove that horses fly. In that, all four hooves of the horse leave the ground, are off the ground at the one time when they're galloping. And in the process of doing that, he also invented the first cinema, or piece of cinema. And it was 11 frames long and took about half a second to run. He went on subsequently. And in the following years, or a few years, 10 years or so, according to the BBC, I have my doubts about this, but apparently he took 100,000 photographs, and that was on glass plate. I doubt it. I think that was probably about 50 photographs a day. Probably not, probably closer to 10,000. But when you put that in the context of what we as photographers do, most of us here will have 20, 30, 40, 50,000, 100,000 images, and we've been able to manage to do that with the aid mainly of digital cameras. Now, we start a process of saying, yes, sorry, I want to do one or two things first. First of all, I want to apologize for some of the quality of the photographs. They're photographs of photographs of photographs in some cases. The other thing I want to apologize for is the fact that I will not be able to name every single person who was in the club for the first 15 years. And I probably won't have photographs of everybody for the first 15 years. But apart from those apologies, I make no apology, apart from a quick introduction for myself. So who am I? Because some of you won't know me. I've been around a while, and I was one of the founder members of the club. And in fact, we have two other founder members here tonight that I'm aware of. Jackson Hutchison down there, and Brendan Cahill, who's over there. So we actually have three founder members here tonight. So, that was me, way back. If I'm going to embarrass other people, I better get my own embarrassment out of the way first. So that was me back in 1985, or thereabouts, as a 24-year-old. Kind of unfortunately, 20 years later, that's what happened. I turned into a weather-beaten, grizzly old git smoking cigars. I've given up the cigars, more or less. And that's what a camera club will do to you. And going back to our friend Mr. Moybridge, if you want to become a prolific, inventive, and innovative photographer, go out there and bang your head off the wall 10 times, because photography it's a most appalling pursuit of a hobby, because you never get perfection. It's almost impossible. Even the best among us will still see flaws in their most perfect photographs. So, a little bit of history. What we're doing here, we're going to ramble through 15 years, and it's a little bit of everything. So a little bit of facts, a little bit of history, a couple of funny jokes, maybe, we'll see. A couple of funny stories, and we'll take it from there. So, facts, a couple of facts. It was actually established in February 1985. I actually thought it was January 85, but going back, it was actually February 85. Tony Doohan, Claire Farrell, both teachers in Sculmacua, or Aggart's National School, they pioneered the establishment of the club with John Reid, who's a past president. But John Reid's a professional. He worked with Ed Ross for years and years and years. What he didn't know about photography, not worth talking about. Now, the original members, there's about 20. And John Reid ran a VEC course. For those of you who are young enough, you won't even know what a VEC course was. Forget about it. Don't worry about it. It's a course. Now, the club was actually founded at a meeting of those people who were on the course in school in Monstrose. And I was there, and so was Jackson, so was Brendan, and we got going. So, I'm going to do a quick rundown of one or two of the people who are important to the club. And that's John Reid, as he was then. And he's the godfather. And coming up here, we have a fellow called George Morris. Since passed away, unfortunately. He's the capo di tutti capi. A most interesting guy. And I'll just move on to the next shot of him there. You get a better sense of the man. He was quite old. And in Celbridge Camera Club at the start, the average age was quite young. It was kind of late 20s, very early 30s. Because you were drawing from a group of people in the town here who had only just moved in. So they were all pretty young. But George was actually one of the few people that I know who actually fought in the Second World War. And he actually fought with an artillery regiment in Burma and came back to Ireland subsequently after the war, set up a business, and decided, and this is according to his own words, that he would make £1 million and he would spend £1 million. And that's exactly what he did. And there's proof of that. So he was quite an extraordinary man. Again, what he didn't know about black and white photography, you could rightly understand. He knew everything about it. Now, in terms of a father of the club, there's only one. I mean, that actually, and now is a good time to tell the story as to why I'm actually here tonight. 2 months ago or thereabouts, I noticed an article in the IPF journal, or monthly newsletter, and it was about Celbridge Camera Club, and there was a photograph in it of Dallas, and under it was, Dallas, come here, who founded Celbridge Camera Club? And I went, no, he didn't. So I got on to George straight away and said, by the way, George, you might want to know, and I gave you a spiel. And George, being a kind of innovative chap, rang me up and said, that's great, Michael. Do you know what would be a great idea? And here we are. Here we are. But, so, and I can tell you one thing, it was really good fun doing this. There was a lot of work in it. I had to, contact a lot of people and sort through a lot of photographs, including some of my own. And it's actually one of the things that I noticed when I was going back through all my photographs, and one of my regrets was that I had loads of photographs of loads of different things, and I had very, very few photographs of people. And it's a major regret. It's something that I've turned around in the last 5 or 10 years. Now, with every family, you have the weird cousin. You're sitting down there. And that's Jackson Hutchinson. And there was nothing that Jackson couldn't source. Jackson was in the photography business, various angles of it. And an absolute, chancer. But absolutely fundamental to the early successes of the club. But equally so to this chap, Uncle Podge. Podge Kelly. You know Podge Kelly. Podge's probably been down here a few times. And this is Podge when he was, had a lot of hair and it's all black, and he was quite young there. But Podge did a huge amount to support this club. He came out, he ran he judged competitions, he gave lectures, he supported us here, there, and everywhere. And he still is a really good guy. Now, some of the younger people in the club, you might remember that young lassie, Anne Rafter. Some of you may well still remember her because, as far as I know, she works in one of the local doctor's surgery in the medical centre. And then there's a young fellow there, 20 years of age, Paul Abbott, comes from a Celbridge family. He was, I think, our first secretary since living in Australia. I'm moving quickly along because, this was the mid-80s, the style was a little bit peculiar. Plus, we had a lot of free black and white film, so we had to use it somewhere or another, and that was one of the shots. Oops, sorry. Going back, some of the founder members, and some second names I can't remember, but we have Pat left, Seamus, Anne Rafter, Tom, Margaret, I can't remember her second name. And up here on the top right-hand side, Claire Farrell. Now Claire, not alone was a founding member, but Claire was also the very first chairperson of the club. And she was an all-round good kid at the time. Moving along, and we had some members at the 1987 AGM. And you can see there that everybody comes along to the AGM with their cameras. And now we come along with our solicitors. But, yeah, is there anybody apart from the usual, there's nobody I particularly want to point out there. And we move along another little bit. I think the following year, I'm open to correction on any of these, but one or two people, Owen Kavanagh, who I've since been in touch with very recently. He was the former chairman of the club. And this chap here, I just want to point him out particularly, that's Vincent O'Reilly. Now, Vincent became very important to the club. He was quite young there, as you can see. And we move on. That's just one of the shots, very formal, semi-formal shot of the committee in 87, 88, or it could have been 86, 87, I'm not too sure. Now, you're all sitting there and you're all going, right. So far, all he's done is speak about the men of the club, or predominantly the men of the club. And he hasn't mentioned any of the women of the club. And I, for one, am not going to stand up here and start pointing out the great-grandmothers of the club, or the grandmothers of the club, or the godmothers of the club. I value my life too much for that. I will, in fact, refer to the sisterhood of the club. And as you can see, there is a list of names and, you know, in some cases who they were and what they were and when they were. And I think maybe point out one or two that I haven't pointed out so far. Jean Byrne, second chair of the club, first lady president of the club. Mary Millet, may she rest in peace. Rita Nolan, who's here tonight. Bridie, I don't think Bridie's here? No. And Edel Moran is here, another former lady chairperson. Now, that's only a segment of the women in the club in the early years who were absolutely so important. It was one of the things I think, you know, straight off at the start of the club. Because we had quite a number of young people, we also had a very good gender balance in the club. And it's something that we tried to, you know, impress upon committees. Always keep the gender balance going. It makes such a difference, and I don't know, for my money, we wouldn't be the club that we are if we didn't have that balance. Now, needless to say, I wouldn't dream of putting up a funny photograph of any of the ladies, but we might just throw that one up just for a little bit. And then we move quickly along. Now, that's just there for information, don't worry about it. Just gives you a quick rundown of who is who in terms of chairpersons. And one or two things struck me on that I hadn't quite realised. Karen Keith was chairperson for 2 years in a row. Brian Edery was chairperson for 3 years, 3 terms. One of them, unfortunately, because Mary Millet was unwell during her stage. Now, when we talk about the Camera Club, what did we want initially as a Camera Club? We all wanted wonderful landscapes. Not saying that one is. But we wanted blues and greens and nice clarity and all the rest. We wanted lovely punchy black and white photographs. We wanted them, you know, really, really push out there and be nice and punchy and contrasty. And we wanted slides that were so super saturated and crisp and sharp. And instead what we got, unfortunately, was this muddy colour prints. Bad film, bad printing, bad photography. Now that particular shot was taken, this is something that I'm going to come back to, on the first official Celbridge Camera Club outing on the 23rd of June 1985. Unfortunately, I don't have photographs of anybody who was on the trip. Now, you might say, well, how did I know it was the 23rd of June? And how did I know it was a Sunday? Unfortunately, on that particular day, a group of Sikh terrorists decided they'd blow an Air India jet out of the sky off the south coast of Ireland, and they did so and killed 239 people. And unfortunately, for that reason, that date lives on more so in infamy than in relation to Celbridge Camera Club. Very early on, we realised that one of the things that we needed to do was to get our photography out to people so that we would have exhibitions and bring our photographs to the people. And that is a photograph of the one remaining copy of our, what would you call it? What do you call those things? Brochures for the exhibition. And it's quite interesting to see the names inside it, and we have those names anyway. So I'm keeping that one very, very safe. And if you notice there, we're charging 50 pence. So you could get into the exhibition free, but there was a couple of enforcers on the door making sure you paid 50 pence for the brochure. Moving along, a couple of gardeners at the exhibition in 1987. Take a good look at that. Take a look at the dodgy moustaches, the dodgy beards, and the really dodgy jumpers. There's quite a little bit of bad taste there. And more bad taste. This is something probably from practical photography, and I remember photocopying that in black and white, handing it out to all the members, and this is the way to do things, and thankfully we've moved on, I think, a little bit from that. Now, where were we? Oh, sorry, I'm still on a bit of a theme here, but anyway. Where were we? Where were we located? Well, we know, we moved here in September of '89, so we're almost 30 years here, and I think at this point, it will be good to acknowledge the cooperation and support of the board and management of the Slip Hall for the last 30 years. I mean, they've done a super job for us, been really, really cooperative with us, and it's been good, and it's been very good for the club to have that kind of centre point where everybody knows where we are, and it makes such a huge difference. Now, I'm going to tell a little story about the Paul House. Drop water, please. The Paul House was mainly residential part of the Salesian Fathers, and I think I'm right, Dallas, you can correct me. They were located out there at Young's Cross. And we were down there for a couple of months. And during one of the nights, thanks to Jackson, who was a resourceful guy, he managed to get a model and several lights, studio lights. And a very nice model she was too. And she was very accommodating and not shy. And during the course of one particular shoot, the head father happened to come in at the most inopportune moment. Had a quick look, walked out, and probably went off to pray for us that our souls would be, kept out of hell or maybe put in hell. I'm not too sure, one or the other. And that would be the end of that story, except that about a year later, a very eagle-eyed member of Celbridge Camera Club brought to our attention the fact that our model on that particular night, he had seen her on the inside back page of a magazine which in that time was banned in this country and was subsequently unbanned until 1998, I think. So it is nice to know that Celbridge Camera Club played its part in the fortunes of one Hugh Hefner. Now, I'm coming up to an issue here which is trips and outings and that, because this is a feature of Celbridge Camera Club, whether it be the Monday night outings during the summer, ad hoc outings elsewhere, weekends away, big trips, foreign trips to Asia, to Iran, to Cuba, etc., lots of trips. And it's something which we do, we've always done, and we started off, I think, sometime around 1987 or thereabouts. You can correct me on that, Jackson, but you were there, so was Dallas, myself, and Vincent. Unfortunately, it rained for the whole weekend. We never got anywhere near the island. I don't even think we got to see the island, except briefly on Friday night, and that was about it. But Dallas will tell you the story about the Gannet's wingspan, if you're talking to him afterwards. Now, Kilmore Key. I'm using Kilmore Key as a bit of an example. I'm just watching the time. I mean, look, Kilmarquee is a fabulous place. The Salty Islands are just absolutely fabulous. So for new members in particular, or newer members, if you haven't been to the Salty Islands, go to the Salty Islands. And the Salty Islands were a great spot for Celbridge Camera Club, because what it did was, it made us probably the best natural history, wildlife, birdlife photographers in the country. And it paved the way for many a winning shot and for a lot of accolades along the way, but from a lot of people. And I suppose what we wanted, you know, gannets, and we wanted the little black gulls. Sorry, I'll keep out of your way here. They've got highlights in the eyes. Thank you, Photoshop. And more gannets. And if you wanted to shag, well, Celbridge Camera Club is probably not the best place for that. Now, a couple of people there. Young Pat Craigie, young Liam O'Reilly. Is Liam O'Reilly here tonight? No. It's a pity. So a lot of other people there, and that's a muddy old shot. Probably not a great day. There's a better shot. Another gang of people. On the way. And as you can see, that was a pretty good day. Now, here's a little shot. I tell this story, I've told this story for about 20 years. And eventually, about a year ago, I started not believing myself. You see the two people up here, sitting down? Well, those two people were from the Danish Environmental Protection Agency. And on the evening that I saw them, and that we came across them, we were sitting down on the beach on the north side of the island. And for anyone who's been there, if the sun is shining and it's hot and it's humid and you're knackered and you're sunburned, what you really want at that point is a cool beer. So what did we have? We had cool beers, because we left our beers sitting in the well of the Prince's house, and I brought 2 cans of Heineken over to them. And they were sitting down, and I handed them the 2 frosted cans of Heineken. And they looked up at me, and the little eyes were full of tears, and they said, "Have you not fucking Carlsberg?" Well, they were most impressed. In fact, the lady there was most impressed. She looked at me, she went, "Premium lager." I went, "What kind of people did you think we were?" "We're not going to be drinking Dutch Gold." But I thought it was interesting that the Danish EPA would send these 2 people over. And they were covering most of the islands off the south coast of Ireland. And just recording what birds were there, their health and so on. And they certainly seem to have a much greater interest in our wildlife in Denmark than our own Environmental Protection Agency. And that annoys me a little bit, because I just spent 2 years of my life drafting the legislation which set up that agency. Now, in relation to this whole kind of issue of friendship and camaraderie and common purpose, we had a big night at the island. We've got 15 people on the island. It's never been done since. We stayed over, and thanks to Collie, we managed to figure out how to light a fire without a match or a lighter or anything like that. Collie taught us almost everything he knows. Don't mind that fellow there in the funny looking wig. And it was all very kind of Bear Grylls. We were down gathering up driftwood and making fires and cooking from scratch and going around catching rabbits and skinning them, and you know, it was good fun. As I say, it was all very Bear Grylls. Oops. Now, serious now for a minute. There's an ominous on the Great Salty Island that says, "No man is free who does not set freedom above all else." The words freedom resonated with me, has always done so. And there are 3 things as photographers that we need to be aware of. 3 freedoms that we need to be aware of. We need to be free to take the photographs we want to take. We need to be free to go to take those photographs, whether to travel, whether to access land, beaches, mountains, woodlands, whatever. And that's very important. We need the freedom to exhibit our photographs and our images. And the third freedom is we need the freedom to publish, and we need the freedom to be recompensed for our work. Bear those freedoms in mind, guard them with your life. They have been attacked over recent years. Watch them. That's the last bit of philosophy. Now, I like a bit of photography, as you might have guessed. I also like flying and aircraft. So, I managed to get one decent shot in my entire life. Managed to win the Best of Exhibition in 1988. That's a slightly more close shot of that. To my mind, and I've seen a few of these, that's still one of the best shots of the red arrows I've ever seen. Moving quickly along. Back, I mentioned Vincent O'Reilly to you some time back. Vincent is the man behind the camera here. And Vincent was very, very quick to realise that you needed the support of the community. You needed the support of politicians, local businesses, local people. And he organised a trip to the Mansion House in 1988 while Dublin was celebrating its millennium. And that was a bit of fun, but it was the start of getting people, getting a little bit of political backing for the club. Ben Briscoe was a local TD and happened to be Lord Mayor at the time. He lived out the road here. And yeah, we subsequently made him a life member, and I think he tootled off at some point. But anyway, Vincent did this really weird thing back in 1989. He organised a competition called the Kildare Cutie, and he got 500 entries of photographs from kids under 5 years of age, their parents obviously. And he had a prize fund, which was a weekend in Ashford Castle. Now, a weekend in Ashford Castle now would cost you about £1,500. It was a lot of money, it was a big prize. And we got huge publicity out of it. Absolutely massive publicity. And we really couldn't have hoped for anything better. And that lady on the right hand side is Geraldine McCormick. She was the secretary at the time. And Vincent did a really good job on that. And we got a lot of support and a lot of recognition locally that we actually existed. Now, around that same time, the first known photograph of Mark, captured in wide, aged 9.5, with a little compact camera there that he bought with his first communion money. Sorry, Mark. It had to be done. Had to be done. Moving along, we will come back to Mark. Just wanted to give you a flavour of what we were doing at IPF level. Because right through from 86 onwards, we were engaging with the IPF finals through the National Shield and the IPF National League, and we were doing, we were doing okay. We were winning a bit here and a little bit there, and we were coming 9th and 10th overall, but we weren't really hitting anything. Now, I think we did a little bit better here in 1990. I think we got up to 7th place, and that kind of set us off. Actually, one of Mark's sons here, as it happens. And so there's a good few people represented on that. And that was the style of photography at the time. So a little bit of everything. And that happened to be the black and white panel. I think Mark has one there as well. And Dallas has one. That one.
Yeah, I won the last one as well, actually.
And you have won the last one, yes, sir. Am I right, Dallas, that you...
That's mine.
You recently sold...
My daughter, Robert,
yeah, you sold that photograph again recently, did you?
Many times.
Many times, yeah. So there's the photograph, it's what, 40 years old?
It would be...
give or take, yeah, and it's still selling. So, back to my bit of philosophy. 1990 was an amazing year for the club. If there were probably, in the first 15 years, there were maybe 3 critical years. 1990 was fantastic. We decided at one point, we were having a bit of a trick around what we do, what we wouldn't do. But again, it was in this theme of bringing in the community, what would we do? So we decided, okay, we're going to photograph Celbridge. And we photograph every key building in the place. We put it in an album, and it'd be great. And then we decided, no, we'd do it a little bit better than that. We would do a really good job. We'd do some aerial shots as well. We sent Dallas went off and hired an aircraft and did our bit. And we decided we'd do 12 albums. And that we would give one to each of the schools and each of the libraries and all the rest. And we got some really, really good work out of that. And we got some really great, I suppose, appreciation from the community and from far afield as well. Now that's a list of the names of the people. There are one or two interesting things here. They're the people who are actively involved in putting this together. And in the actual book itself, in the album, is a sheet for a photograph of these people. And it was never done. We could never get the people together, which is a crying shame, but these things happen. There's also one very funny story, because there's one chap there, whose name is Kevin, I'm just not going to say which one, who went out and he got 36 of the best shots of Crowdon Forest Park that you could ever get. And they were really, really good, right up until the time that he opened his camera to discover that he had no film in it. And that's a true story. Our style has been very ecumenical altogether. We have 3 different religions featuring there, believe it or not. So we are a very inclusive spot. Now, I'm just going to move on very briefly. And there's a little bit of an interlude, and I'm going to see if it works. And if it works, very good. The Celbridge album was quite popular, and between myself and Colin Kavanagh, we had a couple of contacts in RTE, and we got Alistair Jackson out for a day, and he ran this, just spent a whole day with us, and managed to give us 2 minutes on the 9 o'clock news. And let's see if it comes up. Some of you would have seen this. I'm just keeping fingers crossed. Why isn't that?
It's not
Transferring.
This is Dallas Canning, a man on his way to make history, carrying under his arm something which will become history, and which is about to be deposited for posterity in the National Library. It's an album of photographs, a distillation of Celbridge as it was to be, produced and presented by Celbridge Camera Club with an eye on tomorrow. It's the first time the National Library's had such an outing.
This is Celbridge 1990, and I hope will be looked at 100 years, 200 years from now as a vital record of what life was like in one particular corner of Ireland in that period.
What began as an idle thought last Christmas grew into a project that absorbed 2 months of the club's time and countless rolls of film. Some Lawrence collection photographs had sparked that idle thought to record the changes the intervening 90 years had brought. In 1900, Celbridge had a population of 500. By 1975, that had grown to 1,500. Today, it's over 10,000. The town, to trace its origins to the year 1200, is now facing change. If you want to freeze frame 1990, photography's the answer.
Well, we're just a group of amateurs that like taking photographs, and we have about 30 members that meet once a week and we have fun.
And that fund has produced 12 albums, one from the National Library, one from the local library, the rest for schools and sponsors. For the Camera Club, it's the end of a project, but perhaps for Celbridge, it's the start of a new interest in its own history.
Sorry, folks. Bear with us.
Does anybody know which
Jerry?
Just stop and start the presentation.
Start.
See at the very top, end screenshot.
Oh, yes.
Start again. Just go on to the slide you're on and just start.
You can see better, Michael. So, that was Alistair Jackson's piece to camera in relation to Celbridge Camera Club. That went out prime time, 9 o'clock Saturday night, and the reaction we got from that was absolutely fantastic.
We doubled our membership actually.
We doubled our membership, absolutely. And as Della said at the time, we had about 20 members, or 30 members. The following 6 months, September when we started back, we had 60 members down here, we didn't know what to do with them. Well, way too many. Anyway, so we move on from that. It was a good year. 91 was okay. Myself and Dallas and I didn't know this. We managed to get our licentiorships on at the same time. 4th and 5th. I don't know whether I was 4th or 5th. It was one or the other. And here's Uncle Podge back again. And one thing to notice there, and you probably noticed through some of the rest of the shots, a lot of the men wore ties, jacket and ties. That's how much things have changed. And
For the worst.
yeah, possibly.
I think we should go back to some of this.
I was almost going to wear the jacket and tie tonight just for the fun of it, but I decided not. Now, this is interesting not because of myself or George, but it's interesting because myself and George, for I think the only time in Celbridge Camera Club's history, actually shared the Photographer of the Year award. I don't think it's happened since. I don't think it can happen since because there are several of them. But sitting in the background is Mark. While myself and George are all delighted with ourselves, Mark is there as well because he's picked up, I think it was his first gold medal for best print and slide in the IPF print and slide competition. And damn fine job he did too, and we were very proud of him at that stage. And we still are. And there he is again, Mark, not so serious, with Uncle Podge and Father Dallas. And there he is again. Doesn't he look like? But he looks important. Yeah. Now, this is a special treat for Mark. Not the way it sounds. So forget about Mark. This isn't about Mark.